Hi, everyone. It's Bob Cariglia with Rizolve Partners, and I'd like to welcome you to our podcast today. I'd also like to welcome Fraser Hardy. Fraser is the president and founder of NorthNet Media based out of Brockville, Ontario. Fraser, welcome to our podcast. It's so great to have you here.
Thank you, Bob. It's great to be here, and thank you for inviting me.
My pleasure. Well, today, Fraser, what I want to talk to you about is this whole revolution of AI. It seems we can't move anywhere without running into those two letters, AI. And I know that in your business, certainly that's becoming a bigger issue. But before we get into that, Fraser, why don't you tell me a little something about your business and how long you've been in it, and what are the things that you guys at NorthNet like to do?
Sure. Yeah. Well, Bob, NorthNet's been around since 1999, so 26 years now. We are a small team of 5 people, and we like to say that we are your web team or your digital marketing team. So we specialize in custom website development and digital marketing for small to medium-sized business, really right around North America. So most of our clients are Ontario-based, but we do have clients across several provinces in Ontario. And of course, in the last couple of years, we have really started to recognize the importance of AI in our business specifically, and even extending that into our clients. So over the past year or so, we do have a side of our business where we work with clients to help them understand AI, how to implement it in their businesses, and really how to identify processes that make sense for AI.
Well, that's terrific. Well, and things are moving so quickly. I'm sure that it's something new every day, every week. In your business.
It certainly is. That's understated to say that it's moving quickly. I would say that even what we're going to talk about today, within a week or two, some of it will seem like it's outdated already. But that's the nature of the business, and I'm sure we're going to talk about that speed and transition.
Well, that's a great place to start. When you think about it in this rapidly evolving world of AI and technology, you know, what do you say to a business owner who may not be all that tech savvy, but knows that they have to get into this game, and AI is certainly part of that new reality? What do you say to them? How do you introduce it to them?
Yeah. So, I mean, AI is one of these things right now that I would say we're kind of experiencing this monumental change. And it's one thing about AI that's different than other technological changes is that it's suddenly accessible to everyone instantly. So, regardless of tech background or education or status. So, it seems to have happened in such a very short frame of time as well. So, it has a great potential to dramatically shift the way we do business, and the way we even do our everyday life. So, this means for average business thinking about solving problems, delivering services, hiring teams, managing projects, and changing almost everything that we do in our day-to-day operations has the potential to change. So it's a little bit different, the shift in AI today, than what we've experienced in other types of changes. Take, for example, email. So email took about 10 to 15 years to really have that scalable and impact across business operations on a day-to-day. Whereas, AI is predicted to take 3 to 5 years, and we're kind of already partway through that 3 to 5 years. So it means there's a lot of opportunity for business who are looking to, leverage AI.
Yeah, interesting. And I know that AI really has been with us for a while. I think, on a non-business, front, Steven Spielberg did a movie on AI, 20 years ago, I think it was. So I know that, the concept of AI has been around for quite a while. And I think that's referred to as traditional AI. Talk about that a little bit, if you would. What was traditional AI? How has AI crept up on us over the last number of years?
Yeah, that's a really good question, and you're absolutely right. So AI has technically been around, I believe, since the mid '50s. So it's a traditional AI, as you mentioned. It's basically tasks, or it's meant to perform specific tasks based on like predefined rules and patterns. So we have experienced this in our day-to-day lives over the past several years. So things like TurboTax. You plug in all the numbers and it does some predefined things and calculations based on those predefined rules, or understanding credit scores. So it's basically intelligence to say, well, here's how we come to this credit score. It's an algorithm. or even simply, GPS and MapQuest. Those were AI tools that were set on predefined rules. Or if you're a gamer, Pac-Man, believe it or not, is a traditional AI tool. So it's traditional, it's based on the predefined rules and patterns. Typically, traditional AI has always been not available to everyone either. So it's been for those people that had the large computers or the data centers, or they had coders that could actually write these softwares.
Okay. Now, yeah, I mean, things are evolving quickly, and I know that, in 2022, I think it was, all of a sudden the term generative AI, started to become more popular, or GPT and so on. First of all, what does that mean? How does that different than traditional AI? And, how would I use that in my day-to-day business?
Yeah, that's you're right. In 2022, fall of 2022, OpenAI came out with Chat GPT. It's the first kind of accessible GPT. So what is GPT? Well, it stands for Generative Pre-trained Transformer. So generative AI, or what we call that today, unlike traditional, generative is it creates new data. So it's supposed to create new data based on, or that resembles human created content. And that's why it feels accessible, because we use our language to simply give it instructions and then come up with responses, versus having to be a coder. So that works under the premise of what we call large language model. So OpenAI, Gemini, um, Claude, those are called large language models, or LLMs. So it would be my simplest explanation is that you and I both have this kind of large language model capability. Since we were born, we've learned a language. It just so
Hmm.
happens we know English. So we can communicate and have a conversation with each other based on that language. And we can talk about anything. But at some point, when you meet someone new for the first time, you have no context to who that person is. So you begin to ask questions to understand, well, who is that person? What do they enjoy? What do they like? And so you build this thing called context. And now the next time you see them, you have context, and you can ask them, how was the game? Or how was your night last night? Things like that. So when we talk about generative AI and a large language model, we then use what we call training data, or retrieval augmented generation, which is basically taking context, and that context could be our company information, our product brochures, white papers, testimonials, customer information. And then we use that large language model to interpret that data and to give context, so that now when we have a conversation with it, we get the desired results. So that's in essence kind of this generative AI. A couple key things about generative AI: it doesn't actually know anything if you don't give it context.
Mm.
It can regurgitate a bunch of things based on English language, or the language, I should say, and that's based on like predictive characteristics of words. But understand, it has no kind of lived experiences or emotion, so it does require that context, and that's where fine tuning and prompting come in.
Right. And certainly there's been a lot of effort over the last couple of years to teach people how to create that context so that you're getting better information coming back to you when you ask it, or when you query, the chat GPTs and the other products that are out there.
Yeah, absolutely. And
Interesting.
we're just to kind of jump in on that GPT, we are at that GPT stage, or the chatbot stage, which is moving quickly into other kind of stages of AI. So we're in this generative AI that's going to move into reasoners and agents. So you may have heard the term agentic AI, and that's
Hmm.
basically the ability not just to retrieve answers, but also then to perform actions on our behalf.
Okay. So on the basic level, I mean, just thinking of the chat GPT, example, if I'm a small business, in what way could that really help me? Just that particular basic interaction with AI. How could that help me, and how would I measure that? Like, where are the benefits coming from?
Yeah, I think, I mean, that's a really good question. And there's, depending on the industry that you're in, I think that the benefits can be many different areas. And it's going to be, we're going to see more benefits coming forth. But really, in essence, I mean, every business it can experience things like increased efficiency, sorry. Basically, reducing time spent on carrying out repetitive or tedious tasks. So that also then yields cost savings, or even
Mm.
cost savings in terms of doing financial analysis and understanding where holes are or where expenses don't need to be made anymore. AI can help to identify those things. Obviously, better decision making. This is a tool that I use almost every day to assist me in making decisions, or both on strategic and on project decision making, much faster and much more accurate than I could make on my own. Also, enhanced customer service or just a customer experience. So using chatbots, on websites, for example, to help facilitate customer experience or customer support issues, reducing the time that individual people have to deal with that. Or even customer experiences where we get into personalizing that experience. So understanding who that person is, and then being able to communicate on a level that they understand and whatnot. Of course, scalability and growth is huge as well. So, using AI to simply expand operations or product lines without having to proportionally increase costs.
Yeah, that's interesting. And that actually, leads me into one of the other thoughts that I had here. I always think AI, probably the same way I did in the early days of .com, in the early days of websites, and the early days of Google, that it was really dedicated to large high-tech companies, large banking organization, financial facility, or financial institutions, and so on. But it sounds like, let's say I'm an electrician, or let's say I'm a moving company, or let's say I'm a store. I mean, it sounds like I can use AI in many of the ways that you've just mentioned that would be valuable to me.
Yeah, and that comes right back to the accessible nature. I keep bringing that up because I find that the reason why so many businesses are looking at what they can do with AI is because it's more accessible. It's easier to communicate. But you're absolutely right. So it's interesting because we actually work with companies just like that. So, trades companies specifically, where we're identifying opportunities to implement AI in their operations. So on the high level, knowledge-based industries are the easiest because any knowledge-based worker knows that ChatGPT, for example, can be a huge assistance in generating ideas or brainstorming or coming up with, content or things like that. When you get into practical applications, so a tradesperson, a storefront, movers, you might say, well, where can I use AI in those areas? Most of those companies have departments that are not kind of practically hands-on. So that's an easy one. So HR, generating proposals for marketing, creating actually marketing materials or sales funnels, analyzing financial data in the finance department, even job costing versus time tracking. So looking at, in a moving company, for example, scheduling people. So how many people do I need for this particular house at this particular time? And here's the distance that we have to go. So looking at scheduling based on, past jobs, and then taking that data and allowing AI to analyze and saying, oh, we're predicting this. So we're actually working specifically with an electrical company right now, and looking at providing a tool for electricians to have on site. So if you're familiar with the Ontario electrical code, it's massive.
Mm-hmm.
So an electrician on site, currently, if they have a question, what do? Well, they pick up the phone, call back to the office, and talk to somebody and get bounce ideas back. So you're consuming people's time. So one of the tools that we're working on is an AI tool that they'll have with them at all time, where they can just simply ask a question and have the AI, the large language model, interpret the electrical code, which we have used as training data, and get that answer while they're on site. So the other piece to that is that we're actually logging that information and putting it into a database. So the HR department can then look at it and see, hey, where are our electricians lacking when they're out in the field? What do we need to either provide more training on or provide more resources to get those answers faster for them? So there's a practical application in the real world.
That's really super interesting. That, from a practical perspective, about 20 years ago, I worked in a large call center and marketing services company. And one of the services that we provided to the automotive industry, we used to call it the Technical Assistance Group. And we had literally, in two different call centers, 300 former technicians sitting at desks with banks of screens in front of them. And if a dealer for that particular client was having difficulty resolving a problem while he's under the hood. They would phone the tech center or the tax center, and they would literally be looking at their screens and looking at all the different manuals and so on. But it was being done by an individual. And you think of the cost of having 300 people sitting in a facility in front of laptops and screens and so on and so forth. And the example you just gave would have the ability to, you still may need an escalation point. So maybe you take that 300 people and you narrow it down to 10. But it sounds like AI would be able to perform all of those activities and capture it in a way that someone who's looking at productivity improvements or product improvements could be able to take that data that's being generated and learn from it.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And in your example, some people may say, well, isn't this taking jobs away? And I can't say that it's not right now. There will be opportunities, but in that regards, having the ability to have the answers right in front of you all the time is worth its weight in gold. To take that a step further, when you consider that AI can also do image interpretation and video analysis, now we have a different level of support in our pockets. So those same service technicians in the auto repair shop are taking a picture of a part and saying, can you identify this? And where do I get this? So now when you start to combine that with your company's data, and you're out in the field, I'll use the electrician, for example, and they come across something that was unexpected. And so simply being able to take a picture, send it off and have it logged, and have, by the time they get back to the office, that part has already been ordered and it's sitting on the desk. So it's when you start to put all these pieces together, these small processes, you realize that the efficiency, again, back to the efficiency, time saving, cost saving, is a huge benefit.
Right. And as you say, what's been typical of technological advancements is, new jobs are created as the old ones fall away. And, we really get into the information age of, there's huge opportunity as we find new and better ways to use AI and apply it to even more applications. And that creates a lot of opportunity for people in pretty interesting ways. Yeah. Think about it, 25 years ago, if that's the right number, your company wouldn't have existed. Certainly not the way it does today.
That's a very good point. When we started, I started NorthNet in 1999. Before that, I was working at another tech company, and I started a web development division in their company. I remember literally going door to door in the town I live and knocking on business owners' doors and talking about why they need a website. And at that time, the question was, well, what's a website? What do you mean a website? What's a website? So you're right. That's, 30 years. Over the last 30 years, we've gone from what's a website to, well, you have to have it, and now it has to be AI powered.
And it's table stakes, right? I mean, you need to have a website, to manage your business or your association or the group that you belong to. It's just table stakes in terms of providing that information to the people you're trying to reach out to. So yeah, it definitely has changed the world. So question, I use ChatGPT, I've tried some of the other ones, and of course the version that I use is free. And it gives me pretty good results. I've had, really good information come out of it, and I've been able to, write better emails. I've been able to explore things in, literally seconds versus having to Google things endlessly until I found what I was looking for. So I get good value out of that, but I also know that in the various applications, there's the free versions and then there's the paid versions. As a small to medium-sized business owner, why would I move to a paid version if I'm getting such great utilization out of the free version? Like what does that provide me when I move to that next step?
Yeah, that's a good question. So you're right. There are many, many tools out there. And I think what I love about how everyone is developing it now is they do have what's called a freemium version. So there's a free version that everyone can use. And then they have different levels of paid accounts, which is a great way to get people involved in using it. Mm-hmm. So the free versions are okay, but here's the drawback. Here's the biggest drawback is that the limitations are when we go back to this idea that a large language model can use your company's data to train and build context. The
Mm.
free versions often don't allow a deep level of context of understanding. So let's say that you're using the free version right now and you feel that it's hitting about a 60 to 70% accuracy mark when you're generating something. When you have a paid version and you build context and background of your company into that, you can expect that over time, you're going to get that into the 95 or plus% accuracy. And that's because it begins to learn context. It's like spending time with people. The more time I spend with, my friends, the more I get to know them, and I can buy them better birthday presents. Okay,
Mm.
so I mean, there's a lot of advantages to paid versions, and quite honestly, the price points are very reasonable. Yes, most of them are subscription based because they're changing so rapidly, and they're cloud-based applications. We don't download it like the old days of Windows. So when you think of ChatGPT specifically, in addition to that building context, there's so much more value to that paid version, like having the ability to have saved chats or organizing all your chats into projects, so by customer or by product or by service or by, it could be by department of your company, building what we call custom GPTs or like mini programs that allow you to run very specific applications for your business or
Mm-hmm.
building them just using natural language. Obviously using Canvas, which is full editing capabilities, or one of my favorites is deep research. So ChatGPT offers a fantastic deep research product. Now we're talking about ChatGPT, but it should also be pointed out that Google Gemini also provides that. So does
Mm-hmm.
Anthropic Claude. Those are kind of the big three. Mistral is also one. We've heard of DeepSeek, but I'm currently not involved in that at all.
Right.
Yeah. So, I mean, greatest thing, paid versions, they learn your business. So your
Mm.
results become better and better with more usage. Bottom line.
Yeah, so interesting analogy that you use, as when I grew up in an environment where I was in an office, and the people around you, the teams that you built, you created context with them because you might have played the same sports, lived in the same neighborhood, went to the same schools, vacationed in the same places. And of course, when we hit the pandemic and we all went remote, all of a sudden, to some extent, it was difficult to build context with people because you didn't have that constant interaction. So to me, that's a bit analogous to what you've just said. If you're using a free version and you turn your computer off, the context goes away with the free versions to for the great extent. But if you can maintain that context and it's constantly understanding more things about you and your company and the services and products that you provide, I can see that being a very valuable learning. Yes, it's not learning in the way that we learn, and but it's maintaining that information so that it builds upon the additional information that it learns. Would that be an accurate statement?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's not to mention it builds context. It builds, I don't want to say relationship, but it's actually building a persona of who you are. So every time you produce something, it's in your tone, in your language, and it remembers chats. And again, circling back to the video and image capabilities, there's also voice capabilities. So if you're an avid user like me, when I'm driving, I will turn on my ChatGPT and I'll start having conversations, and we'll brainstorm. We'll build a marketing plan together or discuss a specific problem that we're trying to solve. And we'll have that conversation. As I say we, but I'm having it with an AI engine.
Right.
And when I get back to my computer, it's all there. All that it's there. And so I can, what do I do with that? Well, now I turn that into actionable items.
Boy, that's amazing. And if you live in a big city and you have a commute, to go see clients or to get into the office every day, being able to use that capability while still having both hands on the wheel, that's a huge and safe way to increase your productivity and really get thoughts out of your head and onto not paper, but in this case into your computer, as you say. So great example. So one of the things that I think about, from time to time is, at Christmas, we bought our son a new electric toothbrush, and it's AI enabled. And it just sort of blew me away that, my God, toothbrushes are now AI enabled. And I know that, you've got the whole Internet of Things, lots of AI creeping into all kinds of different devices. We've got all the different softwares. We've got the GPS. We've got, our phones. We've got our TVs. Everything is AI enabled. It almost seems to me like there's going to be this massive traffic jam of data and information crashing into the middle. And as a business owner, that might scare me a little bit in terms of I want to get, I want to start advancing utilizing AI, but as I see all of these things creeping up, how do I do it in a way that I feel comfortable, that I'm not taking on more than I can chew? How do I move myself into this in a controlled fashion, I guess is my question.
Yeah, that's a really good question. You got me really curious about the AI empowered toothbrush. I'm little scary, but maybe that's the end of dentists. I don't know. I mean, I could do without another drill or anything.
Yeah, who knows?
I mean, that is a really good question. And yes, there are literally thousands of AI tools out there and more coming out every day. Not to mention, there's new models of previous versions coming out almost every week. And this is going to sound interesting. I'm a huge fan of trying things and experimenting personally. So I do a lot of that. I'm in that industry though, and so I like to try a lot of different tools and see what's the capabilities of this tool and what could it do, and even experiment trying to solve the same problem with 5 different tools. That's the industry I'm in. Wouldn't necessarily suggest that to every business owner because that could be time consuming and take you
Mhm.
away from your core business activities. And that's
Mhm.
not what you want to do. So, I mean, there's some very simple questions I think to start. I mean, just to filter out the noise of what's out there. And it's coming down to your business operations. What are the biggest bottlenecks in my business? What's slowing us down? What's costing us money, or what's frustrating my team or my customers? And then it's kind of circling to say, well, what repetitive tasks am I doing that I don't want to do or shouldn't have to do?
Mhm.
Or what repetitive or tedious tasks is my team doing? And then we come down to that, what AI tool will actually solve that problem for me? Um, I have an 8-step implementation plan that I talk about a lot. And one of the steps in there is that I really do believe that every business needs either a champion or a team of champions, call it a task force, if you will, where they're going to basically set up your business for success. And that
Mhm.
team of people needs to kind of start with what is the policies and ethical use around what we're actually doing, and then decide what are the processes that we're going to tap into to start with. And then there's some key ways to do that, like just to looking at low risk, um, the low risk internal operations right off the bat,
Mhm.
and saying, well, what's the lowest thing I could start with today? So rather than kind of looking at all the different tools and trying to figure out how many should I get, it's looking at your own business and saying, what are my business activities? What do I need to focus on? What do I not need to focus on? And how can I use AI to change that? And now let's find someone on our team that's going to be a champion to find the tool to fix that problem.
Okay. Okay. And Fraser, would it be fair to say, I know that in the last 20 years or more, the high tech software industry has become much more about integration. So my accounting system can talk to my CRM, my CRM can talk to my HR system, and so on and so forth. Is it fair to say that AI is being developed in the same way that there's a lot of integration opportunities? So even as I'm adding capability with this particular AI tool, that in the future it will likely be able to, or maybe currently will be able to, communicate and interact with other AI tools. Is that an accurate statement?
Yeah, you bring up an interesting point here. And so, in the past, most of our systems that talk with each other, we've had to have a layer to interpret data. So,
Mm-hmm.
we had to have well-structured data. So, if you want your accounting system to talk to another system, your data had to be well-structured, and really, you had to have some mechanism in place that would compare it and match it to some degree. And that took a lot of human intervention to kind of get to that point, or a lot of software developers to do that. So I think what blows the lid off of that with the AI world is that AI is very good at understanding unstructured data.
Mm.
So That's the big difference. So you can take an accounting report out of QuickBooks or whatever accounting software you use, and then you can take a time tracking report with two different sets of data uh, structure, and then begin to ask AI and say, let's make some predictive analysis here, or can you look at a specific job, find out all the time we spent on it, what do we predict the cost would be, what did we actually cost, what were the employee costs, and have it come out with some actionable insights. The other area that I love to use, so this unstructured data, is in proposals. So a lot of proposals that businesses put out are wordy, especially if you're responding to an RFP or a tender. And often RFPs and tenders appear different depending on where they're coming from. So they're all structured slightly different. But at the end of the day, all of our proposals have the same content in it. So being able to take all of those and just put them into a container and ask AI to go and analyze that, it is very, very good at understanding that unstructured data. That now allows us to do very interesting things. So imagine a new RFP tender, you receive that, it comes in, and you want to now say, I know we've done something like this in the past. So AI, go and find the 3 projects that best match this tender, and let's extract data from that to create a proposal. So I kind of went off tangent a little bit on that one, but there's some a big advantage to AI, unstructured data.
Yeah, no, that's a great example though, because I know a lot of our listeners, respond to RFIs, RFPs, and so on, or just generally are doing quotations, which can be very complicated and super time consuming, as we've all experienced in our careers. And if you've got a tool that will help you, organize your data and give you the best data, best foot forward, if you wish, obviously that puts you in a better position to win, those requests, and that in itself is massive in terms of a benefit to a company.
Yeah.
So, well, that's super interesting. So, just a couple more questions, and as we, not moving or not making a decision to incorporate AI is a decision. You choose not to do anything. What's the danger today of not doing anything? There's some companies out there that are, and I'm not talking about mom and pop corner stores here. I'm talking about some manufacturing companies and other service-oriented companies that are very good models, probably have great bottom lines, have been very successful for many years. And it's easy to sit back and say, why would I want to change this by inserting this new technology or this new capability? What's the danger of not doing anything in your opinion?
Yeah, another great question. So, these are questions that come up a lot, and it's usually centered around, if our profit margins are where we want them today, why would I change what we do? Risk either changing that profit margin, why not just keep on going? Or those who are, maybe in the last years of business saying, I'm not going to change now. I don't want to adapt to new technology at this stage of the game. But here's the reality. So, what you're experiencing today in business, in all likelihood, if you do not adopt AI, you're going to lose out to the businesses who do, because those margins that you're experiencing today are based on what everyone's doing today. If other businesses in your world, in your competitive sphere, are adopting AI technologies and suddenly becoming more efficient or more productive or able to produce more, or whatever that may mean, they may have a happier workforce because there's less hours, for example, that you have to work. Now you run the risk of losing your competitive edge to somebody who is using AI. So, I do like to say it's you won't. Businesses who use AI are going to outlast the businesses who choose not to use AI. And it's that's a big part of it. So.
That reminds me, I love the story of the company that invented digital photography, Kodak. And I know for some of our younger listeners, they know Kodak as a company that used to be, but I grew up with Kodak. You grew up with Kodak. Everybody had a camera that was either had Kodak film or was a Kodak camera. And yet they did not adopt the new technology that they created. I think Fuji camera took it and ran with it. And where's Kodak today?
Yeah,
You know,
very good point.
amazing. So last question. You know, I guess we've kind of talked about it, but you know, your recommendation for someone who wants to get started, you know, where do they start? I mean, do they go on to Google and look at AI? Do they start looking at, you know, what are the first steps for somebody understanding to say, okay, I need to get into this. I need to bring this new technology to address that, you know, one of those processes that you were chatting about. You know, what's your recommendation for someone actually now taking the next step?
Yeah, I mean that's a big question. I think there's a few different areas that we'll touch on in that. You know, where do I get started? How do I get started? Because it can feel like a lot of people feel paralyzed at this moment, and they go, "I don't know what to move forward with."
Mm-hmm.
So I guess the encouragement would be that even asking yourself, "Where do I get started?" or "How do I get started?" is a positive sign. And I'll just say that it's not going to be an easy road to begin with, to start with, but I can almost guarantee the amount of work that you put in today toward AI is how far you will be ahead of the competition later. So
Right.
that's, you know, one way of kind of positioning and saying, hey, anything I do today is going to help me. So practically, if you're looking for what are the things in my business that I need to do, it would be, again, uh, low risk things within your business, generally internal operations. So internal communications, internal memos, high value. So processes that immediately you can save time or money on. That could be producing marketing content. It could be doing social um, strategies, things like that. Um, yeah, repetitive or tedious activities, anything that you do a lot. So an example, we wrote a very simple little piece of AI that simply checks my email every 4 hours. So
Mm.
it sounds weird. When I say check your email, I'm saying most of us, we just look at our email bin 20, 30 times an hour. We don't even realize it. We're just looking to see, did I get an email? We're not even
Mm.
looking at the email yet. All we're doing is just looking, did I receive an email? That's it. And that takes our focus away from our activity. So a simple AI bot now just checks my email and it creates a summary of all unread emails with a one-line summary. And if there's an action item, it put that as well. So it's one-line summary and action item. And now I get one email I get delivered directly to me to my phone, and I can read that and decide, do I need to act on anything?
Mm.
And if I don't get it, I know there's no email. So
Yeah.
it's a simple thing that just took away, 80 times a day I check my email. And that's not reading it. That's just seeing, do I have to
Yeah.
respond to this? That's a simple, practical level.
Well, that's a great example because, of course, we all know the gut, you know, the hole in your stomach when you miss an email and you only pick it up 2 days later, and it was something that you really wanted to either receive or respond to, and now you're playing, you know, catch up on that. But if you had something that was giving you a little bit of an early warning that this is an important email because, you know, and you don't have to be looking at it, you know, 30, 40, 50 times an hour just to see if something shows up. So that's a great point.
Yeah. One other practical, I also want to talk about kind of on a company level, but one other practical, really effective tool that we've implemented is in all of our online meetings, which I probably do 10 or 15 a week,
Mm-hmm.
whether it's Zoom, Google Meet, or Microsoft Teams. We use a note taker, so an AI note taker. And so it records the meeting, it extracts the transcript, and it also extracts all the action items that were discussed in a meeting. Well, we took that a step further and we've taken those action items, built a little AI routine that takes the action items and puts it directly into our project management system, assigns the person that was discussed in the meeting, and if a date was set, it'll assign a due date. So we've removed the step of having to review a meeting, take the action items, and somebody manually putting it into the project management system. It automatically just, within 2 minutes of the meeting ending, the tasks are there. So
Wow.
we've removed that step. So we're saving, several, I'll probably say like 20 or 30 minutes a day, just based on the number of meetings of just moving stuff over into other systems. So
Yeah.
that's a practical example of actual time savings, and it's internal. So it's very low risk. We're not affecting the
Right.
client.
Yeah.
It's something that we're seeing immediate results on.
That's a great example because, how many times have you been asked to take minutes in a meeting, and the person taking the minutes really isn't part of the meeting. They're just a court reporter, taking down information, and then they've got to clean it up and they've got to distribute it and so on and so forth. That's a lot of work, and they're absent in the meeting even though they're sitting in on it. It's so what you're saying is there's a very practical use of AI that someone who's new to it could put in place and see immediate results just because of the fact that this is something that we do each and every day, right? Meetings and online meetings. So yeah, that's a great example.
And those are good practical ways just to kind of get your feet wet and say, and look at your rest of your leadership team and say, this is what we can do.
Yeah.
As I kind of segue into that side leadership team, there are some practical things that we just discussed, but then there's also things on a company level that I think are really, really important. And I'm really going to focus on two. One is education. So, starting with education is a huge factor, and I call it always be learning. So as a leader in your company, find a podcast or someone online that you can listen to when you're driving or sitting in the hot tub or mowing your lawn, whatever it is, and consume that. Allow yourself to be a learner. Most business owners are lifetime learners. So we kind of get stuck learning about how do I run a business. Sometimes we need to focus on, well, how do I use AI in business? And here's a little tip. Where's a great place to learn AI? Ask AI. So you can actually ask ChatGPT to teach you something.
Right.
So if you're unsure, well, how do I use ChatGPT? Ask it. It will tell you.
It'll tell you
educate you. That's a huge thing. And then, the other thing that I would also say is that humans. So people first. Your company is made up of people. And so how do you get started as a company? Well, it's understanding that everyone has their ideas on what AI is, how it's going to impact them, their jobs, their roles, their future. So I always say nurture human connections. And here's the reality. At the end of the day, AI is going to level the playing field between all your businesses. So all our competitors, everyone is going to be using AI to some degree. And what's left after that? It's your culture with your team, your clients, your suppliers, your competitors. That's going to be the differentiating factor for long-term success. So educate, incorporate people, and then roll out a nice plan that involves people.
That's perfect. Well, I can't imagine a better way to wrap up, this podcast with those great words. And for everyone who's been watching and has been enraptured by this discussion, I've been talking to Fraser Hardy, the president of NorthNet Media. Fraser, if someone wants to get in touch with you and hear more about, the company and maybe ask you a question, what's your website?
Yeah, so our company website, northnetmedia.com. We are, again, a web development and digital marketing. You'll see that on there. We also have, if you go to my website, fraserhardy.com, you'll find some very specific information on training and workshops around AI. We are launching a training portal later this spring, specifically for AI for people who are looking to learn. So I'm happy to help, happy to, be part of the business community and see it grow together, because I do think AI is going to have a huge impact for all of us going forward.
No, that's great. And Fraser, this has been so interesting. I'd love to invite you back on a future podcast. And would you be open to that?
I would absolutely love that, Bob. I love talking about AI, and it's been a real pleasure chatting with you today.
Perfect. And just in closing, Bob Cariglia, I'm one of the partners at Rizolve.ca. Rizolve is Rizolve. And we help build value in companies. And one of the ways that we've done it is by partnering with Fraser and his team to build our website and to share information such that we have. So Fraser, I want to thank you. This has been terrific, and I look forward to us getting together again and talking about AI and other technologies, maybe at an even higher level.
Absolutely. Thank you again, Bob. Appreciate the honor to be here.
All right. Take care.
Bye now.
Okay.